rotate. But that's just my 2 cents.
She had mentioned that there was stuff, so it's not completely set.
Okay, that's good. That's good then.
And I think if she takes that position, she probably
ULD 2024-00.
Recording in progress.
No, I thought it was. Let me start over then. This is the August 20. Sorry, I'm off by a month. July 23rd, 2024 hearing for WLD 2024-011 Pacific Highway Commercial. My name is Joe Turner. I'm the city's hearings examiner. I'll start with some brief announcements and a summary of the process that will follow so everyone understands how you can participate in the hearing today. I start by saying I'm not a city employee. I am licensed as an attorney and trained as a planner. I say that so you know you're getting somewhat independent review of the application before me today. My role as the hearings examiner is to conduct public hearings and make decisions about certain land use matters in the city of Woodland. In making those decisions, I'm required to apply the city's existing laws. I'm not a policymaker. I don't have the authority to vary from or change the laws. If anyone thinks the laws need to be changed, you can work with City Council and Planning Commission to do that. But state law requires that this application be judged based on the laws in effect when the application was filed. As a hearings examiner, I'm to provide an unbiased decision maker. I believe I am unbiased with regard to the application before me today. I have not had any pre-hearing contact with any of the parties regarding the substance of the application, and I don't have any interest in the subject property or any of the surrounding properties. But anyone has the right to challenge my impartiality, to argue that I'm biased in one way or another, and you can do that when it's your opportunity to testify. Procedure will follow. I'll start by asking staff to summarize their staff report, copies of which are available on the city's website. Then the applicant will have an opportunity to present their proposal and respond to the staff report. Then anybody else who wants to testify about this application, whether in support, in opposition, or with questions or concerns, may do so. Once everyone's had an initial opportunity to testify, I'll give everyone a chance to, I will give staff and the applicant alone an opportunity to respond to the testimony that was offered. If those responses include any new evidence, then I'll give everyone a chance to respond to the new evidence. Otherwise, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and announce what I'm going to do. Generally, I will issue a written decision within about 2 weeks after the close of the public record. I'll send my decision to the city. The city will send it to parties of record. So anybody who testifies orally or in writing before the close of the record will be sure to receive a copy of my decision when it's issued. When you testify, if you're here in person, please come on up to the podium there. Please begin your testimony by stating your name and your full mailing address. Please spell your last name so I get it right. And if you represent someone else, please say so. There's no arbitrary limit to the length of time you can testify, but testimony should be relevant to the applicable approval criteria, which are set out in the staff report. Also, please don't repeat testimony offered by yourself or earlier witnesses. I take good notes and I can review the hearing recording if I missed anything. If anyone feels they need more time to prepare, you can ask me to hold the record open or continue the hearing. If I hold the record open, you'll have an opportunity to submit additional written testimony and evidence before I make a decision. If I continue the hearing, we can come back and do this again at a later date. In this case, given that the staff report was issued yesterday, I think, I'm going to hold the record open for a week at minimum to give everyone a chance to review that in detail and respond in writing. But if anybody wants me to hold the record open for a longer period or continue the hearing, you must make that request before the close of the hearing today and provide some support for whatever you want to submit during the further open record or continuance, why that information couldn't be submitted at the hearing today or during the 1 week open record period. If there's anybody online, last time I looked there wasn't, but if there is, and they want to testify, they can indicate that by clicking on the raise your hand button, which different platform. It just has a raise your hand, doesn't it?
It should.
Okay. I'm sure people can find it. That little hand icon will appear next to your name. We'll call names from that list if anybody wants to testify online. And again, if you're testifying online, please begin by stating your name and full mailing address. Also, anyone who's online will need to unmute themselves before they testify. Give us your testimony when you're done testifying. Mute yourself again, and please click the raise your hand button again so we know you've had the opportunity to testify. But that concludes my introduction. Ms. Garcia DeBoard, you want to start us out?
I'm Eileen Garcia DeBoard, the Associate Planner for the City of Woodland, and I will be going over the development application for Pacific Highway Commercial. The proposal includes 3 different application types. It's a boundary line adjustment, a site plan review, and a major variance. The major variance is the thing that the hearing examiner has the decision-making authority on, and the reason we're here today. But the application is being reviewed concurrently, so we'll be going over all 3 elements of the one proposal. So first, just a brief overview of the location. That yellow arrow is pointing to one of the 4 sites that are part of the proposal. The one that the yellow arrow is on is where the site plan review will occur, but there are 4 parcels involved in a boundary line adjustment, and that site with the yellow arrow was recently addressed. It's 7023 Green Mountain Road, and all of the parcels are within the highway commercial zone. This is a list of the existing lot sizes and the new proposed lot sizes, so ranging from 2.96 acres to 9.57 acres is the existing, and then at the proposed, there's a range of 2 acres to 8 acres. This is the site plan that shows that boundary line adjustment. The dashed lines are the existing boundary lines. A little hard to see on here, but the dark solid lines are the proposed lot lines. This is the review criteria for a boundary line adjustment. So a boundary line adjustment cannot create any new lots. We started with 4, we're ending with 4. The minimum lot size in the zone has to be met. It's 10,000 square feet, so less than an acre, and like we went over previously, the smallest parcel will be 2 acres in size, so definitely meeting that criteria. They also have to maintain access to all parcels, so no landlocked parcels, no parcels that don't have access for regular vehicles, and also fire. And then the approval has to be consistent with any conditions of approval from any previous plats, and it's consistent with that standard. All of the proposed lots, well, all of the subject lots have to be within the same zone, and they are. And you can't do a boundary line adjustment across any public roads, and that's not applicable to this proposal. So on the site plan review specifically, they're proposing 3 buildings with a total of about 56,000 square feet. There will be about 59 associated parking stalls, a stormwater detention pond, and a large retail lumber yard with maneuvering area between the buildings. This is a map of the City of Woodland. That red circle is showing you where the subject lots are located up in the north, and that pink color is the highway commercial zone. A permitted use in that zone is retail lumber yards, which is what the proposal is. This is one of the examples of the site plan, so you can see the 3 buildings there. That large one at the top of our screen, which is to the east. North is going left on this site plan. So that large building is where the public access to the commercial space will be, and then there's some additional buildings for things like storage. And then you can see their loading areas and maneuvering areas in the center, and then the green shows you landscaping and stormwater, and then you can see their parking lot on the south of that large building there. The site plan review is a little unique because there is a stream. I'm going to go back to the last slide just so you can see where that stream is. It's over to the north on lot 2. It's that white parcel. So typically, under a normal circumstance, part of this proposal would be in the buffer of that stream, but the applicants have a previously approved critical areas permit that approved a buffer reduction. With that buffer reduction, this proposal is not within that stream buffer or any other critical area buffers. So as long as the mitigation plan is implemented the way it was approved on that previous permit, then this site plan review would be good to move forward without any additional requirements. There's a condition of approval in there to make sure that that happens just because the mitigation plan has not yet been implemented. I do want to point out, and I can try to remember to bring it up at the end too, there are two conditions of approval in my staff report that are contradicting. It's 25 and 30, I believe. One of them says that no building permits shall be issued until the mitigation plan is fully implemented, and the other says that occupancy shall not be granted until the mitigation plan is implemented. I meant to fix both of them and only went back to one, so we want to go with that occupancy will not be granted because that's what our critical areas ordinance allows. So that first one should be fixed to say occupancy instead of building permits, and then that second one, the last sentence didn't get finished. It ends in that the mitigation plan should be accepted and found to, and it should be finished to say found to meet the standards and requirements of all applicable authorities.
Do you happen to have that written down so I can just insert it?
I can send it to
Great,
you.
thank you.
And then these are the criteria of approval for a site plan review. So you have to meet standards for landscaping and architecture. I'll go over the architecture more in detail, but staff found that almost all standards for landscaping and architecture were met. The major variance is for architectural standards, so we'll go over that next. They also need to meet parking minimums. Staff finds that 59 parking stalls for the use will be more than adequate. They also need to meet requirements for frontage improvements in critical areas like we just went over. General property development standards, I'll get into that on the next slide. And then just general requirements for sewer, water, stormwater, and erosion. For those development standards, the setbacks are pretty easy to meet on this lot. There's no limitations for side and rear, so they comply with that one. On the front parcel line, you're supposed to be as close as possible to the front parcel line, so it's more of a maximum setback. It doesn't list a number specifically, but our code does require that you put landscaping in between the building and the parcel line, which the applicants have done, so staff finds that they meet that criteria. The building height, all buildings have to be between 15 feet and 45 feet, which they all are, and then there are no limitations for lot coverage, so there's no limitations there. This is the list of the four codes that the applicants are requesting a variance for. They're all from that architectural standards section of the highway commercial zone. There's a standard that requires that on the ground floor facade that's facing Green Mountain Road, that they need to have clear vision glass for 30% of the total area of the ground floor. There is another standard that requires on that same facade that they, for the length of that facade, have a canopy or awning covering 60% or more. And then there is also a requirement that for every 100 square foot of building proposed, they provide 1 square foot of pedestrian plaza at the entrances of those buildings. The fourth standard that they request a variance for is the standard that requires a network of pedestrian paths connecting all buildings. There's some specific criteria that those paths are supposed to meet, but the applicants are proposing no paths, and I will be getting into the criteria and kind of how they meet the criteria for each of those 4 code sections. So these are the criteria. There's 2 main ones that they need to meet. The first is that the variance has to be necessary due to special circumstances relating to the size, shape, topography, location, or surroundings of the property to provide it with rights permitted to surrounding properties in the zone. The second standard is that granting of this variance shall not be materially detrimental to public welfare or injurious to property in the vicinity and or zone. So that first code section, the 30% vision glass, it conflicts with Washington State Energy Code, and since the property is located in Washington, it needs to meet that building code, and staff feels that that supersedes the architectural standards. And then that second code section for the 60% canopy on the front-facing facade, if the applicants were to provide that, staff finds that it would not serve the intention of the code. The customers won't be entering from that facade where Green Mountain Road is. They'll be entering from the parking lot, which is to the south of the building. So applicants are proposing a canopy on the south side of the building where pedestrians will actually be walking from their cars and into the building. The site's in a unique spot in the city. It's right there on the edge. There's not a lot of pedestrian traffic on Green Mountain Road, and our code requires that they have landscaping between the building and the start of the right-of-way there. So putting an awning there would really just cover the plantings that are there, which isn't good for the plants, and the awning wouldn't really serve the pedestrians. The next standard that they're varying from is that requirement for plaza square footage. So the applicants are proposing that instead of 100 square feet, instead of 1 foot per 100 square feet of all 3 buildings, they're only considering building 1 because that's the only building that pedestrians will actually be permitted to enter into. There are some superseding regulations at play here, and the general public is not allowed, not only not to enter the 2 buildings in the back of the property, but they're also not allowed past the fence of the parking lot into kind of that maneuvering area. It poses a safety risk. That area is intended for truck traffic and unloading, and it's a lumber yard. So the lot doesn't have enough square footage to provide pedestrian paths going around the lot on the perimeter. Instead, they're not allowed to go through the lot, and they're just dealing with a size constriction there, because you'd have to have a lot of additional square footage to allow pedestrians and bicyclists to safely enter those areas, and really there's no point for them to go back there. That second criteria about public welfare, staff finds that varying from all 4 of these standards will not be detrimental to the public. In fact, I think that it's going to promote safety in a number of ways, especially with not having pedestrian paths through a lumber yard. So staff recommends approval with conditions, including meeting any outstanding requirements from Clark Howlett's Fire and Rescue, since we didn't have their review finished by the time the staff report was issued, and also that amendment to those 2 conditions of approval that I'll get to you in writing. But aside from that, the proposal was found to meet the Woodland Municipal Code for boundary line adjustments, site plan reviews, and the major variance.
Okay, thank you. I just had 2 questions. On page 8, just the finding under 17-36070, that buildings be set as close as possible to the street, and then finding 26 says building 1 is 15.5 feet from the front parcel line. It doesn't say why that's as close as possible. I think you kind of addressed it with the landscape issue, but is that the basis?
Yeah, so we do also require landscaping between the building and the, I guess, sidewalk that's there. So to allow room for all of that landscaping, they have to meet certain percentages, and also the landscaping in some ways ties into the architectural standards. So there are some standards where if you do something with landscaping in front where you can't see that part of the building, then maybe you don't need to meet the architectural standard. So yeah, leaving room for that to occur.
So how does any development comply with that canopy standard if the landscape, there seems to be a significant.
Yeah,
landscape?
so the canopy is a little different because they aren't proposing an entrance on that side of the building. If they were proposing an entrance, that obviously wouldn't be full of landscaping. It would have access.
It would have a problem.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Is
And
it 60% of the building frontage or 60% of the entrance?
it's 60% of the frontage.
Okay. So you're not required to have landscape, if they had an entrance, they wouldn't be required to have landscaping on that 60%?
They would be required to have landscaping, but not in the direct path of pedestrians entering the building
Okay.
there. I think that the code is kind of considering more traditional. The buildings are smaller and the lots are smaller, so the landscaping requirements are less. But just because this lot is so
Okay.
big, they have so much landscaping that they have to propose.
That makes sense. Thank you. The other question I had was on page 13. One of the neighbors' questions was, Mr. Barbosa asked about, I think it was frontage improvements on Burris Creek are being skipped, and I didn't see any response to that. I'm assuming the Burris Creek property is not part of this development, is that correct?
It is, and there was a previous approval for apartments where I believe they were proposing a street essentially running along Burris Creek, but Building 3 was shifted partway through review of this project to be right where that through lane was going to go. And so part of the application requirements on this was to write a letter that we have from the applicant stating that they acknowledge that approval of this site plan review would mean that they can't move forward with the apartments because that street would not be able to be built. So that's more tied to the apartments.
So when the former apartment site is developed, then the frontage on Burris Creek will be improved?
They won't be able to move forward and develop the apartments. They're essentially acknowledging
Yeah,
that.
but if any other development, whatever.
Oh,
in the
I see what
future,
you're
if
saying.
it's developed in the future, how's Burris Creek frontage gonna get improved is what I'm asking, Mr. Goddard.
So at this point, Travis Goddard, Community Development Director. So at this point, Burris Creek Street or road does not exist. It is.
Burris Creek is a street, it's the name of a street. I was thinking it was
Yes.
where the creek went under the frontage
So
of
there
around
is,
Green Mountain.
so there is a Burris Creek. Can you go to the next screen? So on the left-hand side, you
Yeah.
see Lot 2 has a squiggly line in it on
Yeah.
the left side. That's
Uh-huh.
the north side. That is the actual location of Burris Creek. And the apartments, which is to the left and to the north, is the apartment complex, and they have a permit to build a bridge across that creek to this property, and that's why the access is located where it is.
Okay.
The idea and the require under the city's tip is they have to provide a cross connection between Green Mountain Road and Old Pacific Highway. And
For the apartments.
and the reason, well, under the tip, we require a cross connection. It doesn't matter
Transportation
who
Improvement
does it.
Plan?
Yes, Transportation Improvement Program. So it doesn't matter who builds it or where, it's just required for cross connections. And the reason why that is needed is because just off the screen to the right or to the south of this property is an intersection with the county and the city road, Green Mountain Road and Old Pacific Highway. And it does not meet any design standards. There are safety issues, and there's it. Based upon the alignment of that street would have impacts to the habitat buffer. And that's why the critical area permit and the mitigation is important, because they started grading for that project, but whether or not they actually do the apartments, it may expire before those street improvements get installed. So the impacts from the grading to the critical area have occurred. That's why critical area permit is listed and referred to, that it needs to be implemented, because it is a critical area permit attached to the apartments, but it is on this site, so it should be tied to this project as well. Because if we assume the apartments don't occur and that her habitat permit expires, this project will be located in the habitat buffer, and
Yeah.
that mitigation plan has to be implemented. Now, the applicant has indicated that they specifically did Lot 2 so that they could include all the critical area permits, or the critical area in its own lot. But the city's concern is twofold. One is that the mitigation get completed for the impacts that have occurred. And the second thing we'd like to talk about, or we're worried about, is Lot 2 has frontage that includes County Road, and that we would like some kind of connection before the boundary line adjustment is completed, a commitment by the applicant for either the frontage improvements for Lot 2 to either be tied to Lot 1 of the BLA or the property that the apartments occur on. Because what we could end up with is frontage improvements on this property, and then eventually if the apartments get built or something occurs on that property, we're going to have a gap of Lot 2, and Lot 2 will never develop. Therefore, there would never be a nexus and a proportionality associated with a critical area lot with frontage improvements that need to be done.
That makes sense, and I think that was what the neighbor was questioning, is making sure those frontage improvements
Yeah.
occurred on Burris Creek.
Yes.
Is there a condition on this development that occur? Is it, I'm not sure how that's, since it's either or, and the apartments may not happen, there's some development eventually.
Yes.
so
Now, when the apartments were developed,
they
the
were
the
reviewed and
improvements.
approved. They haven't been built, right?
Yes, sorry.
That's
When
okay.
when they were permitted, the improvements stopped just on the uphill side of Burris Creek. So as a part of that apartment complex, those improvements were tied to the development of this commercial property. And now we are talking about the development of the commercial property. Now, the applicant theoretically can tie it to the development of Lot 1 or Lot 2 or Lot 3 or Lot 4. But at this point, we need them to indicate when they expect to make those improvements to be done.
And is there a condition requiring that they
Um,
make that indication?
I believe there is, but I can check for that before we get to the end of the hearing.
Yeah, well, all you've said makes sense, I just want to make sure it's locked in, so it's not,
Yes, and that's part of why I'm filling you it in, because I want to make sure you understand why.
yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Okay. And I also wanted to point out that our engineer is not able to make it today. He will watch the video and he will use the week of open record to get you additional comments,
Okay.
because the applicant raised some issues and we agree with some of those issues. So when they get up and talk, we'll clarify our position on those.
Okay. Given that the applicant and the city want to submit new evidence, I'm likely to hold the record open for another, essentially 3 weeks. I'll give a week for everybody to submit new evidence, primarily the city and the engineer, or the city and the applicant regarding that issue and anything else. And then everybody gets a week to respond, review and respond, and the applicant can have a final argument if they want it, but they could waive that. That's what I'm predisposed to do at this point, given that additional evidence is gonna come in. Is that it from the city then? That was the only questions I had. Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here represented? Morning.
Good
Used to
morning.
saying afternoon.
Yes. I'm Greta Holmstrom with Standridge Inc. And I'm the planner working on this project. Also here with me is Jennifer Reynolds. She's the civil engineer working on the project. We do have the
Ms. Holstrom, how do you spell your last name? I thought it was on my staff report.
HOLMSTROM.
Okay, thank you. I got it right. Just wanted to check.
So I'm happy to answer questions. Jennifer is here as well, happy to answer questions. But the property developer is also here, Pat Jeffries, and he wants to speak specifically about some of the conditions. So I'll let him speak now,
Okay.
and then
I don't have
if
any
you have
questions
questions,
other
let me
than what
know.
I've thrown out to staff, and
Okay.
they pretty much addressed my questions.
I'm Pat Jeffries, Jeffries, 32927 Northwest Pekin Ferry Road in Richfield.
And you're the developer?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just wanted some clarifications that I wanted to address. On page 3, under water and sewer, it states that I want the water and sewer extended across the frontage on Green Mountain Road. And that's not the understanding and intent that we have, because going back to the original engineering, when we were looking at the apartments, the engineer stated that because that's county property and there's no, that sewer and water are going nowhere, there's no reason to put it in the right of way. Our plan is to stub out the water in two places to Green Mountain Road, one on the north end and one on the south end of this lot 1. The main water line's gonna go through the back of this lot 1 and loop back on the access road across, so we have a loop off Old Pacific Highway. And the sewer's gonna run across the east, the dividing line between lot 1 and lot 3 to service the rest of our project. And also we have a lot going out to Green Mountain Road. It'll deadhead out there to serve any property that the city wants to
Jeffries,
annex.
I can't see the lot numbers there. So the purple one's lot 1. The
Purple's
stream is
1,
lot 2. Where's 3?
3 is the one down in the northwest
The large
corner.
one that abuts
The large
Pacifica.
one.
Okay.
Correct.
And where's the water line
Can
now?
I just walk over there and show you?
Yeah, sure. Is that okay? He's not going to be on a mic. We'll still catch him. Great. Okay. Yeah, that would be wonderful. I understand what you're saying. I just want to make sure I'm seeing where.
The water line's gonna go from here to Green Mountain Road.
Okay.
That'll deadhead. That's gonna service that department.
Okay, that'll be on the west side of Burris Creek.
Yes.
Okay.
It's on, well, it's gonna go up here on the
Okay.
south side of Burris Creek, but that bridge is already in.
Okay.
And ultimately, the agreement is we're gonna hang the sewer and water across the bridge that we put in right here.
Okay.
To service that property when it's done. The main water line's gonna come across here and loop back out here. We'll go under the road and tie in with this, so we have a loop system.
Okay.
And the sewer's gonna come right up through here, so we can service that lot and service all the rest of this 25 acres. And it'll be just a manhole up here right now, but that'll be tied up to later on.
Can you run sewer again? Show me.
Right on, along this property line between lot 2 and lot 3.
Okay.
And come up over to here, and eventually, we own this lot, it'll eventually go, be stubbed out to Green Mountain Road at that point.
And there's already a sewer line along that alignment of the old road alignment.
Yeah, we've already run the sewer up this line, right?
When you say old road, I meant the one that was proposed
Burris
before
Creek
with.
Street.
Okay. Is that what
This
Burris
is
Creek
what-
Street was approved?
Originally, this was gonna be Burris
Creek Street.
Street. Well, but after all that engineering, the city decided that this was too close to that state roundabout there.
Okay.
So that wasn't gonna work, so then we were gonna move it down here.
Okay.
But ultimately, if we do it later, we just come up here and make the cross connection there.
Okay.
The way it's gonna work. And that all depends on what we do with the apartment count.
Got it. Thank you. That makes it much easier to understand.
Okay, so that's one comment I'd like to get clarified about not having that sewer and water in the right of way. And then the next one is on page 14, and it's item 9, where it says we need to construct the remainder of the frontage improvements on Pacific Highway, including a roundabout within 5 years of receiving these plans, signed plans for the Old Pacific Commercial Lot 1. That roundabout at the corner of Green Mountain Road, where the apartments, which we cannot do, I already signed that form in the format that's approved, the cross connection, then we wouldn't be putting a roundabout there. And the cities, we've had a discussion, but it just didn't get done on here, so we have to improve the intersection, but that not necessarily be a roundabout, depending on what else happens on the rest of our commercial property and what traffic impacts are caused.
Okay. Where's the roundabout?
It was gonna be on the intersection of Green Mountain Road and Old Pacific Highway.
Okay.
And then the final thing was just what's already been brought up, and that's on the mitigation, whether that triggered by building
Occupancy.
permits or occupancy, and it should be occupancy, so. That's all I had, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to say anything about this application? Yes, sir.
Mike Lackey, Lackey, with Clark Callis Fire Rescue. I'd like the record to show that we
You're with
received
Clark County, not Cowlitz? Just to
Clark
be-
Cowlitz, excuse me.
Clark Cowlitz, okay.
Clark
thank you. I
Cowlitz,
always
yes, sir.
hear Clark County Fire and Rescue.
No.
Yeah, got it.
Clark
Go
Cowlitz.
ahead.
I'd like the record to show that we received the revisions of the plans to our office yesterday at 2:43 PM. I opened them up this morning to look at them, and I'm requesting another set of drawings for the entire site, showing locations of the fire hydrants. With the paperwork that they gave me, I tried to guesstimate as best for distances, but from what I show, the hydrant off of Belmont Loop going up to between Lot 4 and Lot 3, the next hydrant is off of proposed building 3, and that's just at 1,000 feet. I don't see.
There's a hydrant, that's, it's not showing here, but.
Yeah, it's not shown on the plan, so,
Okay, there's a hydrant there, there's a hydrant here,
well, there's one here at the corner.
that's this one right here.
Yep.
And there's two there, and there's one there, and there's one here.
Okay, I don't show this one, and the one from here, off of Belmont Loop coming in, going up this roadway here
Yeah,
to here,
Okay, we need.
is 1,000 feet, so we're gonna need one between Lot 4 and Lot 3 somewhere. And like I said, that's my best guesstimate is 1,000 feet, because I don't have a scale on the front page to scale that out with. So if you can provide a scale for that, I'd appreciate that. And then to speak on the apartments, when this was first proposed, the Burris Creek Street was the second access point for that 100 apartment building to the north of this site. Clark Cowlitz Fire is under the understanding that that is not going forward. And so therefore that road would not be needed. And we would also agree with the city that the lot itself should be private and not open to the public, and would not
Which
allow.
lot?
I'm sorry, Lot 1.
Okay.
Which is
the
their,
apartments?
no, Lot 1 of this site here.
Is that lot 1 or 2? Oh, I guess it is 1. I thought it was referred to, anyway.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, so their
Yeah,
lot,
the
their
lumber
backyard,
yard.
their work yard, their boneyard,
Yeah, yeah.
should not be open to the public or pedestrians.
Sure. No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so,
And I think is there a condition to that effect? Or I know it was stated in numerous places, but.
It's it is the variance request, so it's the applicants are proposing that there is no access. They're proposing a.
Yeah, so it's part of their proposal. so
Yeah, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so it will happen. We don't need a condition because that's what they said they're gonna do and they held to what they're gonna do.
yeah, I'm just saying
No,
that
I
we agree
appreciate
with
that.
it.
Yeah, no,
So,
I appreciate that. I just wanted to clarify
We
in
would
my
support
mind.
it, yeah. So, that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to say anything at all about this who hasn't had a chance to? There's nobody online, is there? Didn't see anybody under participants, just city. Okay, want to make sure I'm not missing something. Anything further from the applicant?
Just a question
Uh-huh.
about the whole time. You'll hold it open 1 week, and then 1 week to review it in responses.
Right, and if you want a third week to submit a final written argument, I'll give it to you. Or you can waive it at the end.
Don't want any.
You don't want it, okay. It's all right. So I'll hold it open for 2 weeks, total, and I'll give you a specific timeline in a second here. So nobody else wants to say anything. Nothing further from the applicant. Great. With that, I will get my calendar and give you some specifics. So I'll hold it up until July 30th for new evidence from anybody. And then August 6th for anybody to respond. And then I'll get my decision out no later than the 20th. I'm leaving on vacation the 20th, so I will definitely get it out before then. What, 5 o'clock, then anything has to be received by the city? Okay, so anything anybody wants to submit has to be physically received by the city by 5 p.m. on the relevant date, the 30th or the 6th of August. And that concludes our hearing. You can just submit anything you want to submit to Ms. Garcia.